Welcome to another episode of the Meal Prep Monday podcast. I'm your host, Allison Schaaf, and today I'm doing a special episode in honor of Mother's Day. I want to talk about a few small things in my life that make my life feel extra indulgent. And you might laugh at some of them as we get into the list, but I'm hoping that in today's episode, I can perhaps inspire you to think through what items are in your life that really bring you a lot of joy and how you can make room to really splurge on said items to bring a little more joy and happiness into your life. Before we dive into the content, today's episode is sponsored by Prep Dish. If you need help with getting meals on the table every night, I encourage you to go to prepdish.com/MPM, short for Meal Prep Monday, to try out our meal planning service. You can try it out for 2 weeks for free. With the free trial, you get access to all of the different plan types. So we have paleo, low carb, gluten-free. We also just have super fast, which is healthy tasting meals, no real dietary restrictions, but really quick and easy meals. So even if you have like 1 hour a week that you can devote to doing your prep in advance, that's all you need to do some meal prep. And then each night your meals will be super quick and easy. Again, just go to prepdish.com/MPM. I find it's best to just try it out. That's why we do the 2-week free trial. Is I think if you can just get your hands on it, play around with it, see how it can fit in to your life and your routine, you can best evaluate if it's going to be a good fit for you. So that's where you can go to check that out. Okay, so today's episode was inspired. Gosh, I feel like most of my episodes lately are inspired by books that I'm reading now that I'm, making an effort to add more reading back into my life. But one book that I've been reading is Ramit Sethi has a book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I believe that's the title of the one that I read. He also has a podcast, but one thing he talks about is knowing what your rich life is, right? So his topic is always around finances, but this encouraging to live your rich life is a really interesting concept because what he basically is encouraging his audience to do is to think through what you really want. Like if you're wanting more money, like, cause he's talking finance, if you're wanting more money, like what are you wanting to spend this money on and what's kind of the end goal and how do you figure that out? And, what's really important to you. I mean, not everyone has the end goal of, having flying private or doing something super extravagant. And so figuring out which pieces of a quote unquote rich life are important to you and then focusing on those and realizing, sure, if your priority is buying a really fancy pair of shoes, you can likely fit that into your budget. It's just that you can't, you need to pick and choose which of those like really extra extravagant, indulgent purchases are important for you. And so that's an exercise that I've done maybe even more than once because I've listened to his stuff kind of on multiple platforms and in multiple ways. And I've done the exercise with my husband as well. And, there are some bigger things that are a part of like this quote unquote rich life. But in thinking through, there's also some smaller things. And that's really, I think, the fun part of the exercise is when you think through, maybe there's some really small things that, gosh, I never buy this one thing, but when I'm rich, I would buy this like all the time and not even hesitate. And it might be that it's actually a small purchase that you could afford today. So I am going to walk through just 3 ideas of purchases that I've started making that in the past I would hesitate to make. And I feel like it's really, the ROI is high, right? Like the amount of joy and happiness I get from these purchases is greater than probably the cost, even if you look at it as the cost aggregated like over the course of a year or several years. And the first one I'm going to start with, and this one actually is probably the most expensive and feels the most like a splurge, but it feels appropriate to share for Mother's Day. And that is buying fresh cut flowers at the store. This is something that I used to maybe like very occasionally do. And every time I would, it just like, I loved having these flowers in my kitchen and seeing them every day. It just made my whole house feel brighter and happier. And it just brought me so much joy. And again, it used to feel so extravagant. And I finally have decided that I am going to, and I'm going to talk actually at the end of some things I don't splurge on, but I've done the math and I kind of know what it costs over the course of a year. And I don't do it actually every single week. And recently, which I'll probably talk about in another episode, I've started switching my grocery stores. I'm playing around again. It's like this, which ones deliver, which ones do allow you to do the curbside pickup. And anyway, I've started doing a delivery with Kroger, and it's significantly cheaper than the curbside pickup I was doing before, especially with fees and stuff. So, but they don't do fresh flowers. So I actually haven't been doing this as much recently because I'm kind of tweaking which grocery stores I shop at on a regular basis. But fresh cut flowers are something I definitely do on a regular basis. And in fact, sometimes I even double. So after buying them for a while, I've realized that some of the little packs of flowers that you get are really, the packs are smaller, and it's better if I have two of them, like especially lilies. Like I love buying like the stargazer lilies, which usually are one of the cheaper options when you go to buy fresh flowers. And so, but I have found that a lot of times they'll come in a pack of 3, and I feel like 6 of them really is kind of the right number in terms of what looks most beautiful on my countertop. So I'll buy 2 packs instead of 1. And this is something that I've really started to love. I am inspired. I mean, ideally, I would love to have flowers here and have a cutting garden here at our house. And that's something, I've been working with Brooke on and am planning to do in the future, but it's not happening today. So until then, and I actually, you know what? I think where this may have first started is one of the first years out here in Texas, we get the most beautiful wildflowers. And there was one year where it was just so abundant with wildflowers. And every day on my walk, I would cut wildflowers and bring them back and put them on the table. And maybe that's where it really started, because that's where I started like allowing myself to have these flowers. And I wanted to continue on with that. But so yes, in the spring, and we're coming up on that. So, I can take a pause from buying them. I feel like I get even more joy out of going out and finding them on my own and picking them. So yes, fresh cut flowers, if that's something. And so in reading through this list, I'm not thinking, oh, everyone needs to like pick up these things because they're going to bring you so much joy. I'm actually thinking, no, maybe this can help you think through what are the things in your life that really make you really happy. And we've gone through similar lists of like kitchen items, like I've kind of splurged and bought a lot of stainless steel bowls. So I'm not always having to wash one really quick, and I have always a few extras on hand. So I've talked about it specifically more in the kitchen, and this is just more kind of in life. Okay, fresh cut flowers. Number 2 is new ink pens, but the biggest part here being in a variety of colors. So I still do like a handwritten, day planner, task list. I mean, I use Trello and have a lot of tasks online, but I still have to use pen and paper for a lot of my brainstorming and, planning and all of that. And I love to color code it, different. Anyway, that's a whole other, that could be a whole other episode. But when I get my new pen, like these pens, I have a specific pack that I like that has a large variety of colors. I think maybe like 10 or 12 different colors. I mean, there's probably like 6 to 8 that I really use on a regular basis. But I have this, and I finally just put them in my Amazon auto ship because I've realized that they only last so long. And what would happen in the past was like, well, there's still some left of these colors, but I would lose like my favorite dark green or my favorite purple. And so now I've learned when any of them get low, I just allow myself to rebuy the pens. I know it sounds like a small thing. And I think this actually, I feel like this maybe came up in a Gretchen Rubin book, maybe The Happiness Project, on like how much joy she got from buying new pens and realizing she didn't always do it. And it's such a small purchase. And it's like kind of, if it's necessary for the work that you're doing or, the creative process that you have going on in your life, like this is something that we should be buying. But again, it's something that in the past I didn't always do, especially if I had plenty of perfectly usable pens. I wouldn't always splurge and be like, oh, let me buy this whole pack of all these different colors just because I'm low on one color. But now I've realized I like that color. And so I'm going to do that. And then number 3, I don't know if I've talked about this in some of my batching episodes, but with my socks, what I do is like every kind of 3 years, I buy all new socks and I get them all exactly the same. I love this because I don't have to match my socks anymore. They're all the same sock. And once they start to get holes, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to out with the old, bring in my new set. And again, it really only happens every few years and I'll buy, I want to say like 24, but maybe even like 36 to kind of get me through those few years until it's time to, you know, buy the new ones. But this is something that, oh my gosh, I don't know why it makes me so happy, but it just if, doing laundry and I don't have to match my socks, I really do need to get my husband on board with this. He does his own socks, but it's hard for me, like judging my husband's socks. But anyway, this is an example of something that really, it just brings me so much joy to go out and buy. And it does feel a little extravagant to go out and buy all of these socks all at once, especially when, it's not that I'm down to 0 socks, but I just like redo the whole thing, out with all of the old, in with all of the new. And over the years, I've been doing this for a few years now, and it helps with the laundry. I think I've talked in the past, a lot of times we will do laundry once every 2 weeks. So, having that splurge allows me to kind of have that batching process and not be so bogged down by doing laundry as frequently by having more of items like socks. So that helps with that batching process as well. So those are the 3 items that I have found that when I splurge on them, it makes me feel like I have this quote unquote rich life, and it brings me a lot of joy. I've also kind of done the math roughly to see and realize like it feels more indulgent almost than it is, but it's worth it. And I was going to come up with like a counter list of like, hey, here's the things I don't spend as much money on. But just kind of briefly, like one of the cars that we still drive the same car that we bought when we got engaged, which would have been 7 or 8 years ago. So that's an area. So I'm like, just one, like some of the things I don't splurge on are these like big purchases. And so not that you have to justify these, but it's funny how your brain like wants to justify it. I'm like, well, just by, holding on to cars for as long as possible, it really makes those, weekly fresh flowers makes that price seem like that much more reasonable. But other things like purses and shoes, those are other areas too, where I just don't go out and spend much on those. Like I will wear the same tennis shoes until they start to fall apart. Like, I don't like to switch my purses in and out. So I will use the same, and it's not necessarily, so some of them it started to get tricky. And this is why I didn't do like a concrete list. Cause I'm like, well, with purses, maybe I'll get a nicer quality one, but I know that I'm only going to use one purse for like a few years, versus anyway. So that's, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but, just know that like, I've kind of like looked at a lot of different purchases that I make and tried to evaluate and be very intentional on which ones I want to do and not do. And it makes spending and the whole relationship with money feel a lot more, I guess, intentional, and it helps me to enjoy those little purchases and feel like 0 guilt over them. So hopefully this episode, this is one where I would really love to hear your feedback. I'm always open to your feedback, but some of them I'm like, gosh, I really wonder what ideas this spark in all of you that are listening out there. So if you listen to this and have something of like, gosh, this one little thing would feel so indulgent if I just bought like this, fancy chocolate bar every week or, something like that. So hopefully you've been inspired. I would love to hear from you. I'm at PrepDish on Instagram. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, feel free to join that group. It's free to join. If you're a member, even if you're not a PrepDish subscriber, feel free to join there and start the conversation on there as well. Hope again that something sparks an idea in your mind. And that is all I have for this week. Another reminder, though, that if you've not tried our meal plans and you're looking for ways to save time on your meals and still eat healthy, delicious foods, head to prepdish.com/mpm. Try out our meal plans for 2 weeks for free. You'll get an organized grocery list, very specific instructions on how to do meal prep and how to make your meals quick and easy. We've done all the time hacking to make them as smooth as possible. And that's all I have for this week. I will be back again next Monday with another episode.